Listen, something is controlling you. Something invisible, silent, insidious. You don't see it, you don't feel it, but it's there, inhabiting you without you even noticing. And the worst part? You gave it permission. It's a parasite, a sticky shadow that slides between your thoughts, hiding behind every excuse, every "I'll do it later," every "now is not the right time." It doesn't present itself as an enemy, but as a friend. It's kind, understanding. It whispers in your ear, "Rest, tomorrow will be better. You still have time," and you believe it. But here's the truth you don't want to hear. It's stealing your life. Every minute that passes without you doing something to break free from its control is another minute lost, another step further away from the person you could be. And the worst part? It makes you feel like it's not its fault, like this is just who you are, that you've never been someone consistent, someone disciplined, someone capable of moving without needing a spark of motivation. But that's a lie. It's the biggest deception you've bought into. The lie that keeps millions of people trapped in a mediocre existence, repeating the same days over and over, waiting for something to change, without doing anything to make it happen. And you, sitting here watching this video, probably feel that this story is all too familiar. You know you have big dreams, goals, ideas that could transform your life. You know you could do so much more, be so much more. But something is stopping you. Something you can't see, something you can't touch. But it's there, holding you back, turning every opportunity into a burden, every challenge into an excuse to stay in the same place. Now tell me the truth. How many times have you felt that knot in your stomach? That feeling that time is slipping through your fingers and you're doing nothing with it? How many times have you closed your eyes and promised yourself that tomorrow will be different, only to wake up and repeat the exact same cycle? How many times have you felt like the problem is you, that maybe you just don't have what it takes, that maybe you're not strong enough, not disciplined enough, not good enough? Let me tell you something. It's not your fault. It's not that you're weak. It's not that you lack talent. It's not that you're not meant for success. The problem is that your mind has trained you to avoid effort, to protect you from discomfort, and without realizing it, you've fallen into its trap. But here's the interesting part. You can break free. You can escape this cycle. You can tear this shadow off of you and start moving, start taking control, start making things happen. But it won't be easy. Your own mind will resist. It will try to sabotage you. It will try to make you believe you can't. But if you're still here, still listening, it means that some part of you already knows the truth, that you are not condemned to this prison, that there is a way out. Do you want to know how? Keep watching. This is where everything starts to change. It doesn't matter how long you've been stuck in inaction. It doesn't matter how many times you've tried and failed. It doesn't matter if you feel like laziness has completely taken over your life. Today, we are going to break that cycle. We're going to tear that shadow from your mind and ignite the engine of action. But listen carefully, because this is where most people go wrong. They want to do everything at once. They wake up one day full of energy, convinced that this time they will change their lives. They make a massive, ambitious plan, and within a few days, they feel exhausted, frustrated, and fall back into the same old pattern. Why? Because they're fighting against their own nature. They don't understand how the human brain works. and that's why they stay stuck. Your brain is a system designed for survival. It is not programmed for success, for growth, or for personal development. Its only mission is to keep you alive while spending the least amount of energy possible. And here's the problem: any change, any effort, any attempt to step out of your comfort zone, your brain interprets as a threat. It doesn't care if you want to improve, if you want to build something great, if you want to transform your life. All it sees is that you are trying to use more energy than necessary. And that's enough to trigger its defense mechanism: laziness. That's why you procrastinate. That's why you leave everything for later. That's why every time you try to do something important, a part of you resists with all its strength. Because your brain is fighting to keep you in the lowest energy state possible. But there's a way to trick it, a strategy that deactivates its resistance, that makes it cooperate instead of sabotaging you. And that is the first rule: make it small. This is where most people fail. They think too big, too soon. They tell themselves, I'm going to change my life. I'm going to start training for 2 hours a day. I'm going to read a book a week. I'm going to wake up at 5 in the morning every day. But what happens when they try? They hit a wall. They feel overwhelmed. They can't keep up the pace. And in a matter of days, they give up. Because they were trying to move a mountain instead of starting with a stone. The key is to make it so ridiculously small that failure becomes impossible. Instead of saying, I'm going to write a book, say, I'm going to write 1 sentence a day. Instead of saying, I'm going to exercise for an hour, say, I'm going to do 1 push-up. Instead of saying, I'm going to read every day, say, I'm going to read 1 page. It seems insignificant. But here's the magic: small leads to big. Because the hardest part isn't doing the task. The hardest part is starting. And when you start, when you break the barrier of inaction, it becomes much easier to keep going. Think about this. If I tell you to sit down and write an entire chapter, you'll probably procrastinate. But if I tell you to just write 1 sentence, it's so easy that you can't refuse. And once you write 1 sentence, what happens? You'll probably write another and another. And before you know it, you've written more than you imagined. But it all started with something so small that your brain couldn't resist. And this is the second rule: don't rely on motivation. Motivation is a fleeting emotion. It comes and goes like the wind. One day, you wake up full of energy, ready to conquer the world. The next day, you feel empty, stuck, incapable of even taking the smallest step forward. And do you know why? Because motivation is unreliable. You can't build your success on something so unstable. If you only act when you feel inspired, you'll never be consistent. And if you're not consistent, you'll never achieve anything meaningful. That's why the people who get results don't depend on motivation. They depend on systems. A system is a set of habits, routines, and structures that ensure you keep moving forward, even on the days when you don't feel like it. For example, if you want to read more, don't wait to feel like reading. Set a fixed time every day and stick to it no matter what. If you want to exercise, don't leave it to chance. Make it a non-negotiable appointment in your schedule. If you want to be productive, don't rely on willpower. Create an environment that minimizes distractions and forces you to focus. The secret is to eliminate decision-making from the equation. The more decisions you have to make, the more likely you are to hesitate and procrastinate. That's why successful people don't waste time thinking, should I do this today or not? They simply follow their system. No excuses, no doubts, no negotiations. And that leads us to the third rule: identity over goals. Most people focus on setting goals. I want to lose 10 kilos. I want to make more money. I want to learn a new skill. But they never ask themselves the most important question: who do I need to become to achieve that? Because here's the truth. You don't get what you want. You get what you are. If you set a goal but your identity doesn't align with it, you'll sabotage yourself over and over again. For example, if your goal is to get in shape, but deep down you see yourself as a lazy person, you'll always struggle to stay consistent. If your goal is to be productive, but you believe you're someone who always procrastinates, you'll never change. That's why the real transformation happens when you change the way you see yourself. Instead of saying, I want to be fit, start telling yourself, I am someone who takes care of their body. Instead of saying, I want to be productive, start saying, I am someone who values action over excuses. Instead of saying, I want to be disciplined, say, I am the kind of person who does what needs to be done no matter what. Because when your identity aligns with your actions, discipline becomes natural. And once that happens, no obstacle can stop you. And once that happens, no obstacle can stop you. Because now, action is no longer something you have to do. It's something you are. But this transformation doesn't happen overnight. It happens through small, repeated actions that reinforce your new identity. Every time you choose to take action instead of procrastinate, you cast a vote for the person you want to become. Every time you exercise, you're proving to yourself that you're someone who values their health. Every time you sit down to work, despite not feeling like it, you're reinforcing the belief that you're a disciplined person. Every time you push through resistance and do the thing you were avoiding, you're shaping a new version of yourself. This is how true change happens. Not with sudden bursts of motivation, not with huge, unrealistic goals that you abandon after a week, but with consistent, intentional action, no matter how small. Because the key is not to achieve a goal and then stop. The key is to become the kind of person who naturally does the things that lead to success. And when that happens, you no longer need to rely on motivation, willpower, or external pressure, because discipline is no longer a struggle. It's simply who you are. And that's when everything changes. So I ask you again, what are you waiting for? There's no perfect moment. There's no magical inspiration that will suddenly make everything easy. The only thing that matters is what you decide to do right now. So go. Take action. No more excuses, because every second you waste is a second you'll never get back. And one day, you'll realize you have no pages left to rewrite. And that's when it will be too late. They require motivation, but here's the trap. Once you start, it's incredibly easy to keep going, because the real problem was never doing the task. The problem was the initial barrier, and when you break it with those 2 minutes, your brain enters another state, a state of action, a state in which you no longer need to fight with yourself. You just keep going. Look at what happens when you apply this rule in real life. You say you're only going to exercise for 2 minutes, and you end up working out for 15 minutes. You say you're only going to read for 2 minutes, and you end up reading for half an hour. You say you're only going to work on your project for 2 minutes, and you end up making more progress than you imagined. Because once you start, the effort to continue is minimal compared to the effort to start. It's exactly the same principle that makes it so hard to break out of laziness when you haven't done anything all day. You feel like doing anything requires an absurd amount of energy, but once you're in motion, your brain adapts and it becomes easier to keep going than to stop. And here's the key point. You don't always need to do more, you just need to do something. Even if one day you only do the 2 minutes and nothing more, you're still winning because you're still training your brain to act instead of staying still. You're still maintaining the identity of someone who moves, who takes action, who doesn't get stuck in the inertia of laziness. And if you apply this rule along with the other two, something incredible starts to happen. Laziness loses its power over you. You stop depending on motivation. You stop feeling like every action is a battle. And without realizing it, you become a completely different person. A person who acts without needing to think about it. A person who no longer stops because of excuses. A person who, with every little action, with every well-designed routine, with every 2 minutes well used, is building a completely new life. And when you look back, when you see all that you've accomplished, when you realize that you're no longer the same person who used to procrastinate, you'll understand something that will change the way you see life forever. It was never about talent. It was never about luck. It was always about moving, about starting, about not stopping. Because at the end of the day, what separates those who achieve their dreams from those who never get anywhere is not intelligence, not ability, not luck. It's the ability to move even when they don't want to, even when they don't feel like it, even when everything in their head tells them to wait. And now the decision is yours. Will you keep waiting for the perfect moment, stuck in the same cycle as always, or will you finally take control and start moving, even if it's with the smallest step? Because if you truly understand this, you have no excuses left. All that's left is to act. Because despite everything you've just heard, despite knowing exactly how to get out of laziness, despite now having the tools to change your life in your hands, most people won't do anything. Not because they don't want to, not because they can't, but because their minds will look for an excuse to procrastinate the change. Some will say, "This sounds good, but I'll try it next week." Others will think, "I'll start when I feel more prepared." And the worst will say, "This won't work for me." And with every excuse, they chain themselves more and more to the version of themselves that isn't achieving anything, the version that's still stuck in the same cycle, watching life slip through their fingers while they keep waiting for that perfect moment that will never come. But you, not you. You're still here for a reason. You've made it this far because a part of you knows that this is the truth you've been ignoring all this time. A part of you knows that this is your last chance to stop repeating the same mistakes and take control. Because if you don't, now tell me, how many more times will you deceive yourself, telling yourself that you'll start tomorrow? How many more years will you lose procrastinating what you know you need to do? How much longer will you keep watching others move forward while you stay in the same place? Here's the brutal reality that no one wants to accept. Life doesn't wait for the indecisive. Every day that you stay inactive, someone else is taking the place that you could have had. Someone else is doing the work that you didn't want to do. Someone else is building the life that you keep dreaming about because they moved while you were paralyzed. So, this is the last question I'll ask you. Will you keep being a spectator in your own life, or will you finally act? Because right now, you have two options. You can close this video and keep going with your day as if nothing happened, repeating the same cycle as always, or you can decide that today is the day everything changes. Not tomorrow, not next week, today, now. And if you're truly ready to stop wasting time and take action, leave a comment with this phrase, "I'm starting now." Not because it's just a simple comment, but because it's a commitment. Because if you write it, it means you've made the decision. It means you're not like the others. It means you're not going to let laziness win this time. And if you want to make sure you don't fall back into this cycle, subscribe to the channel, because this doesn't end here. If you're truly ready to change your life, this is just the beginning. But remember, words mean nothing if they're not followed by action. So, turn off this video, get up, and do something, no matter how small. Just move, because the time you have is limited, and every second that passes is a second that won't come back.